April 2026. The departures board at Dubai International, the world's busiest gateway, goes dark. It's not a technical glitch, it's a geopolitical heart attack. British Airways and Lufthansa have scrubbed all flights to the Gulf. The global crossroads is now a no-fly zone. Weeks earlier, the digital Oasis took a direct hit. A drone swarm targeted a core Emirati data center, sending tremors through AWS and Microsoft's global networks. This wasn't an attack on an oil well, it was an attack on the cloud. For 10 years, the Gulf's petro-monarchs have spent trillions to pivot from crude oil to high-tech code. They've rebranded as the world's AI laboratory and luxury playground. The message was simple: even when the oil runs out, we'll live off the world's interest. But the escalating US-Iran conflict is tearing up the script. The hard truth is surfacing: you can't run a 22nd century economy in a war zone. When the sky closes and the servers fail, the most ambitious blueprints in history are just sandcastles in the path of a ballistic tide. The vision is meeting its survival line. For decades, the Gulf was a destination of necessity, not choice. You went there for the oil, stayed in a gated compound, and left when the contract ended. But a decade ago, the script flipped. The petro-monarchs realized that while oil made them wealthy, it also made them a legacy industry in a green energy world. To survive, they had to stop being the world's gas station and start becoming its global operating system. This gamble rests on two massive engines. The first is the experience economy. The blueprint was drawn by Dubai, which transformed from a sleepy port into a global transit hub and luxury playground. Qatar pioneered this experience economy with the 2022 World Cup, an event that served as a $220 billion proof of concept for the entire region. It was the moment the Gulf proved it could successfully host the world at the highest level. The Gulf issued a global business card that reads, "We are stable, we are world-class, and we are open for business." Now, Saudi Arabia has taken this to a tectonic scale. With the $7 trillion Vision 2030, the kingdom is attempting the most rapid social and physical rebranding in history. From the $2 billion disruption of global golf via the LIV Tour to securing the 2034 World Cup, the objective is to anchor the Gulf as the center of the global cultural map. The logic is purely economic: attract the digital nomads and the private equity titans. If you make the desert the most desirable place to live and invest, you can sustain the economy on the interest of global talent long after the last oil well is capped. But the second engine, the tech pivot, is where the real new oil is stored. While the West debated the risks of artificial intelligence, the Gulf states were quietly cornering the market on the hardware. Leveraging their sovereign wealth funds and an endless supply of cheap solar energy, they are building the world's most dense clusters of compute sovereignty. The UAE's G42 and Saudi's massive data centers have been on a historic shopping spree, hoarding thousands of NVIDIA H100 and H200 chips. They are transitioning from exporting thermal energy to exporting intellectual energy. They want to host the world's data and become the global logic engine for the 21st century. However, this tech pivot comes with a strategic handshake. This isn't just about buying hardware, it's about deep architectural integration with the West. When Microsoft invested $1.5 billion in the UAE's G42, it wasn't a simple venture capital play. It was a formal alignment. By ensuring their AI infrastructure is built on American standards and removing unapproved hardware from their stacks, the Gulf states are performing a strategic tech swap. They are effectively embedding their digital central nervous system into the American ecosystem. It is the ultimate 21st century insurance policy. If your sovereign wealth is tied to Silicon Valley and your critical data infrastructure runs on Western architecture, you aren't just a trade partner, you are a critical node in the Western cloud. They are betting that the US will defend a data center in Abu Dhabi just as fiercely as it once defended the oil fields of Kuwait. In the modern Middle East, a server outage is a greater existential threat than a drop in oil prices. Here is the thing about the future: it hates the sound of sirens. In the world of the 0.1%, peace isn't just a vibe, it's a line item. And right now, that line item is bleeding red. Let's talk about March 2026. Picture a nondescript, high-security building in the UAE. Inside, thousands of NVIDIA H100s are humming, processing the data that runs everything from local banking apps to global AI research. Suddenly, a $20,000 drone, a fraction of the cost of a single chip, finds its way into the cooling intake. The fans stop, the servers overheat, and 8,000 miles away in Redmond, Washington, the screens at Microsoft headquarters go dark. The reaction was a brutal reality check for the Gulf. Microsoft and Oracle didn't issue a press release about standing together. They pressed the eject button. Within 6 hours, they triggered their global fail-safes, migrating critical data out of the desert and into server farms in Frankfurt and Singapore. As one Silicon Valley executive reportedly put it, "We love the low taxes, but we can't train a trillion-parameter AI model in a trench." This is the transformation killer in action. It's the moment the digital Oasis narrative hits a brick wall. It's not just the tech, it's the brand. Think about the Silicon Oasis Summit. It was supposed to be the Davos of the desert, the place where the world's elite would fly in on private jets to discuss the 22nd century. But 3 weeks before the 2026 kickoff, the organizers moved the whole thing to Zurich. Why? Because the insurance companies, the guys at Lloyd's of London who actually decide what's safe, basically looked at the Gulf and said, "Nice city you got there. It'd be a shame if something happened to it." They hiked key man insurance premiums by 400%. When it costs more to insure your CEO's flight than it does to rent the venue, the global hub starts to feel like a forbidden zone. And then there's the ATM, the Strait of Hormuz. It's a 21-mile wide straw that the entire world drinks from. 20% of the world's gas flows through it. For Qatar and Saudi Arabia, that gas is the literal cash flow for their vision projects. If the shadow war kinks that straw, the money stops. You can't build a $500 billion city like Neom if your bank account is stuck behind a naval minefield. The geopolitical tax is real and it's expensive. We're already seeing the pivot to the east. Logistics giants like DHL and Maersk aren't leaving because they don't like the weather. They're moving their regional HQs to Singapore because risk-adjusted returns don't include dodging missiles. The Gulf has built the world's most expensive safe haven brand. But as 2026 proved, a single drone strike doesn't just break a building, it shatters the illusion. And in this business, the illusion is everything. For 50 years, the stability of the Gulf has rested on a rigid geopolitical baseline, the Petro-dollar system. It was a straightforward exchange, energy exports for dollar-denominated assets, which in turn funded a massive investment in U.S. defense systems. For the Gulf monarchies, this was the ultimate insurance policy, a security guarantee that allowed them to project an image of a safe haven to the world. However, as the direct conflict between the U.S., Israel, and Iran intensifies, this insurance policy is being fundamentally reevaluated. The paradox of 2026 is that the very infrastructure designed to protect the Gulf, the U.S. air bases and naval hubs, has become a primary source of strategic vulnerability. In a high-intensity regional conflict, a high-tech city like Abu Dhabi or Doha is no longer just a neutral business hub, is functionally a node in the American military network. This shifts the Gulf from being near the conflict to being a frontline asset. This is where Iran's strategy of asymmetric disruption becomes critical. Tehran's goal isn't to win a traditional military engagement, it is to collapse the confidence economy of its neighbors. By utilizing low-cost drone swarms and precision munitions, Iran creates a catastrophic cost-exchange ratio. When a $20,000 drone can threaten a multi-billion-dollar AI data center, the Gulf's security model becomes economically unsustainable. As one defense analyst noted, we are seeing the limits of 20th century missile defense against 21st century attrition. The Gulf states now face a structural deadlock. They have spent hundreds of billions on U.S. hardware, but they do not truly own their defense. From the integrated software of the F-35 to the satellite intelligence required to track incoming threats, their security remains a service-based subscription provided by Washington. Without the real-time American link, their advanced military hardware becomes functionally inert. Furthermore, their financial independence is constrained by the currency peg. Because their local currencies are tied directly to the U.S. dollar, any attempt to decouple from the American security orbit risks a massive devaluation of their multi-trillion-dollar global portfolios. They are caught in a cycle of dependency. They have built a 22nd century vision, but the physical safety of that vision is anchored to a 20th century alliance that is increasingly drawing fire. They are discovering that in the modern Middle East, being the protected partner of a superpower is no longer a guarantee of safety. It is a magnet for regional escalation. The most vivid symbol of the Gulf's ambition is NEOM, specifically the Line, a $1.5 trillion linear city meant to stretch 170 kilometers across the Saudi desert. But by 2026, the blueprints began to shrink. Reports indicated that the initial phase, once intended to house 1.5 million people, was being scaled back to accommodate fewer than 300,000. This downsizing isn't a sign that the money has run out. On the contrary, the sovereign wealth funds are still flush with cash. Instead, it is a collapse of confidence. As one Bloomberg analyst recently noted, trillion-dollar cities are built on the assumption of a 50-year peace. When the regional forecast includes ballistic missiles, the ROI starts to look like a gamble rather than a vision. However, the outbreak of the US-Iran conflict has rendered this future vision increasingly unattainable. In today's turbulent Middle East, the Gulf nations, led by Saudi Arabia, must now confront a cold reality. Their grand project of century-wide transformation requires a level of absolute stability that the current and likely future geopolitical environment of the Gulf simply cannot sustain. At the same time, this conflict is forcing global investors who bet heavily on the Gulf Dream to perform a radical reevaluation of the region. Even if you build the world's most transparent, efficient, and AI-driven economy, it is meaningless if the security bedrock serving as its foundation is cracked. Without that stability, the promised future is nothing more than a castle in the air. The monarchies of the Middle East must now ask themselves an existential question. When the tankers in the Persian Gulf go still, when the skies become a permanent no-fly zone, and when the multi-billion-dollar data centers no longer process a single byte of data, where is the future of the Middle East? It is fundamentally impossible to construct a 22nd century civilization while your neighborhood is still trapped in the zero-sum settling of 20th century scores. The tech filter has been ripped away, and for the first time in a decade, the horizon looks dangerously dark.